Do you not know that the world you see is but a shadow cast by the light of your own imagination? You believe yourself to be a victim of circumstances, a wanderer in a world of sorrow. Yet I tell you, you are the creator of it all. Every sadness, every despair is nothing more than an assumption, a state of being you have accepted as true. But if you have entered it, can you not also leave it? Imagine for a moment that all sadness is merely a cloak draped upon you, and by the power of your awareness you may remove it. Do you not see? Your state of mind determines the world you experience. As long as you assume the feeling of sorrow, it must become your reality. But what if instead you assume joy? What if in this very moment you stepped beyond the veil of grief and clothed yourself in the feeling of peace? Do you not see that the world is but the outpicturing of your inner state? That every sorrow, every joy, every moment of despair or triumph is nothing but the reflection of what you have entertained within? You have been told that circumstances shape you, that events beyond your control dictate your emotions. But I tell you, nothing could be further from the truth. You are not at the mercy of the world. You are the cause. Your imagination is the very architect of your life, and the state in which you dwell determines all that you experience. Sadness is not something imposed upon you. It is not an external force that moves without cause. It is a state of consciousness, a vibration, a feeling that you have consented to, either knowingly or unknowingly. And if you have consented to it, must you not also have the power to reject it? Must you not also have the ability to assume a new state, a new reality, one in which joy replaces sorrow and peace dissolves all despair? There is no power outside of you that binds you to sadness. It is only your acceptance of it as true that keeps you where you are. If you were to step outside on a rainy day and declare that the sun has ceased to exist, would it be true? Would the sun be any less present simply because the sky is covered in clouds? Or is it not that your perception is limited, that your awareness is fixed upon the appearance of things rather than the truth behind them? The sun has not vanished, it is merely hidden from view. So too is your joy, your peace, your wholeness. It has never left you. It has never ceased to exist. It is only that you have turned your awareness away from it and toward the illusion of sorrow. And if it is a matter of awareness, then the remedy is simple. Turn within. Close your eyes to the world of effects and open them to the world of cause. You are the cause. Your consciousness, your inner world, is the birthplace of all that you see. To overcome sadness, you must do nothing more than assume the feeling of its opposite. What would it feel like to be free? What would it feel like to wake up tomorrow with a light heart, with a mind unburdened by sorrow? You must imagine it, not as something distant, not as something that may happen one day, but as something that is happening now. Do not wait for the world to give you reasons to be happy. The world is only a mirror reflecting that which you have accepted as true. If you wait for circumstances to change before you allow yourself to feel joy, you will wait forever. For if you assume the feeling now, if you dare to clothe yourself in the garment of happiness before any evidence appears, then the world must rearrange itself to reflect your new state. It is law, it is unbreakable, unchangeable, and it works without fail. If you were to enter a dark room, you would not fight against the darkness. You would not struggle, nor would you cry out for the light to come. You would simply reach for the switch and turn it on, knowing with absolute certainty that the darkness must vanish in the presence of light. Why, then, do you struggle against sadness? Why do you believe that it must be battled, conquered, or endured? It is nothing but the absence of joy, and joy, like light, is always available to you. You need only turn toward it, assume it, accept it as your reality, and the darkness must dissolve. But you say, how can I assume joy when I feel nothing but sadness? And I ask you, when an actor steps onto the stage, does he not assume the role he has chosen? Does he not speak, think, and feel as the character he plays, even before he has fully become it? And in doing so, does he not convince not only the audience, but himself that he is that which he pretends to be? The same is true for you. Assume the role of joy. Walk as though you are already free. Speak as though you have already found peace. Think from the state of happiness, and in doing so, you will transform yourself into that which you have assumed. Do not look to the world for confirmation, for the world is always a step behind. It can only reflect what you have already assumed. If you wait to see the change before you feel it, you are placing effect before cause, and in doing so, you will remain where you are. Assume first, and the world must follow. It has no choice. It is only the reflection, and you are the light that casts the image. This is not a matter of force or struggle. You do not need to push against sadness, nor do you need to fight your emotions. You need only withdraw your attention from them. Just as a fire cannot burn without fuel, sadness cannot persist without your consent. Stop feeding it. Stop entertaining the thoughts that sustain it. The moment you turn your mind toward joy, the moment you assume a new state, the old must begin to fade. Persist and do not waver. The mind, like a river, has carved deep channels through repetition. If you have entertained sadness for long, it may seem difficult at first to direct the flow elsewhere, but persist. Each time you choose to assume joy, each time you return to the feeling of freedom, you are deepening a new channel. And soon, as surely as water follows a path of least resistance, your mind will flow naturally toward happiness, until sadness is nothing more than a memory. You are not bound by the past. You are not bound by the thoughts and feelings you once accepted. At any moment, you may assume a new state, and in doing so, the world must shift to match it. The moment you dare to assume joy, despite all appearances, you have already won. For what you assume with feeling must become your reality. You are not bound by what your senses report. The world around you, the circumstances you believe to be fixed and unchangeable, are nothing more than the reflection of your past assumptions. If sadness lingers in your life, it is only because you have accepted it as real, because you have given it permission to exist through the power of your belief. But what if you dare to believe something new? What if you ceased accepting sorrow as your reality and instead assume the feeling of joy, of peace, of fulfillment? Would not the world, which is but yourself pushed out, be compelled to change accordingly? Everything begins with assumption. The law is simple yet absolute. What you assume to be true will become your experience, and you have already proven this to yourself countless times. Recall a moment of sorrow, a time when you felt lost, overwhelmed by despair. Did not the feeling precede the event? Did not the assumption of sadness come first, and only then did the world conform to your inner state? You were not sad because something happened. You were sad because you assumed the state of sadness. And in doing so, you invited the world to play its part in proving your assumption correct. But just as you assume sadness, so too can you assume joy. Just as you once accepted sorrow as your reality, so too can you now accept peace. There is no power holding you back but your own unwillingness to let go of the old state. If you truly desire happiness, you must be willing to assume it first, even before any evidence appears. This is the great secret. The world does not cause your feelings. Your feelings cause the world. The moment you shift within, the world must follow. If you were to plant an acorn in the soil and then demand that it become a mighty oak within the hour, would you not call yourself foolish? Would you not understand that all things must unfold in their proper time? And yet, when it comes to the planting of mental seeds, you doubt. You assume joy, but because the outer world does not immediately change, you waver. You allow the old state to creep back in. And in doing so, you uproot the very thing you wish to bring forth. Do you not see? You must persist in your assumption. You must nurture it, believe in it, until it hardens into fact. Do not look to the world for confirmation. The world is only a mirror reflecting that which you have already assumed. If you wait to see change before you believe, you are putting the cart before the horse. You must believe first, assume first, and then the world will shift accordingly. It has no choice. It is law. You ask, but how do I assume something I do not feel? And I tell you, have you not done this many times before? Have you not worried over things that never came to pass? Have you not imagined sorrow before it arrived, only to see your fears materialize in the world? If you are capable of assuming failure, grief, and despair, why then should you not be capable of assuming joy, success, and peace? The process is the same. The only difference is the direction in which you turn your mind. Begin now to assume the feeling of happiness, not as something distant, not as something that will one day come, but as something that is already here. Close your eyes and enter the state of the wish fulfilled. Ask yourself, what would it feel like if all sadness had vanished? What would I think? How would I speak? How would I move through the world? And having found the answer, begin to live from that state. Walk as though you are already free. Speak as though you have already found peace. Let every action, every thought, every word be in harmony with the assumption that joy is now your reality. There will be moments of doubt. There will be times when the old state calls you back, whispering that nothing has changed. Ignore it. It is only the echo of an assumption that no longer serves you. Do not react to it. Do not give it power. Return instead to the feeling of joy. Persist in the new assumption, and soon the old must fade away, for it cannot exist where it is no longer given life. Faith is the bridge between the unseen. It is the unwavering knowing that what you assume must come to pass. The world may tell you otherwise. Your senses may scream that nothing is different, but hold fast. Remain in the assumption of joy, and the world must yield. For the world is but clay, molded by the hands of your imagination, shaped by the thoughts you dare to entertain. Gratitude will strengthen your assumption. Even before the evidence appears, give thanks. Speak words of appreciation for the joy that is now yours, for the peace that is already unfolding. For when you give thanks in advance, you are confirming that your assumption is real, that it is done. And in doing so, you accelerate the process of manifestation. Persist, and the state of joy will become natural to you. No longer will sadness feel familiar. No longer will despair find a home in your heart. You will have shifted permanently into the new state, and the world will reflect it back to you in ways you never imagined. This is the power that has always been yours. This is the truth that has been waiting for you to claim. Assume joy now and let the world reshape itself in its image. You are told that the world is fixed, that it operates by laws beyond your control, that events happen to you rather than through you. But, I tell you, nothing happens outside of consciousness. Nothing comes into being except that which has first been imagined and assumed as true. The world you see, the circumstances you experience, the emotions you feel, all are the result of the thoughts you have entertained and the assumptions you have accepted as fact. If sadness persists, it is not because of an external cause, but because you have allowed it to take residence in your mind. It is a false belief to think that thoughts are passive things, that they have no effect upon the world around you. Everything begins with a thought. The clothes you wear, the chair you sit upon, the walls that surround you, once they were nothing more than ideas in the mind of a man who dared to assume them into existence. And just as these things were first imagined before they became real, so too is every aspect of your life a reflection of the thoughts you have chosen to entertain. If you dwell in sadness, it is only because you have assumed sadness to be real. You have accepted the state of sorrow, and in doing so, you have summoned every condition necessary to confirm your assumption. But if you can accept sorrow, must you not also have the power to reject it? If your thoughts have led you into sadness, can they not also lead you out? The mind is the builder of all things, and whatever is impressed upon it must be expressed in the world. Change the impression, and the expression must follow. You do not fight against sadness, for to struggle against a thing is to give it power. Instead, you withdraw your attention from it. You cease to identify with it. Just as you would turn from a shadow and step into the light, so too must you turn your awareness away from sorrow and toward the assumption of joy. For where your attention goes, there your reality follows. You cannot entertain the thought of misery and expect happiness to follow. You cannot assume lack and expect abundance. You cannot dwell upon fear and expect peace. The law is simple and unchanging. Your thoughts shape your reality. Do you not see that every great change, every shift in experience begins within? You do not wait for the world to bring you joy. You assume joy, and the world must then conform. If you were to wait for external circumstances to dictate your emotions, you would remain bound to the very conditions you seek to escape. But the wise man understands that the world is only a mirror, reflecting what is held in the mind. He does not wait to see joy before he feels it. He feels it first, assumes it as real, and then allows the world to catch up. To shift your reality, you must first shift your mental state. If you were to step into a grand palace, you would not carry with you the thoughts of a beggar. You would not lower your eyes, nor doubt your right to be there. You would assume the feeling of one who belongs. You would walk with confidence, with certainty, with the unshakable knowing that this place was meant for you. In the same way, you must assume the state of joy before it is visible. You must think from the position of happiness rather than toward it. If you wish to know the power of your thoughts, look no further than your own life. Every experience, every condition, every emotion that persists is the direct result of what you have entertained in your mind. If you do not like what you see, do not seek to change the world, change yourself. Change the way you think, the way you feel, the assumptions you hold, and the world must shift to reflect your new state. It has no choice, for it is only a shadow cast by the light of your imagination. There is no need to wait, no need to hope that one day happiness will find you. Happiness is already within you, waiting for you to claim it. The moment you assume it as real, the moment you cease to entertain thoughts of sorrow, it must become your experience. For just as surely as a seed, when planted in fertile soil, must grow, so too must the assumption you persist in become fact. Your thoughts are not idle, they are the creative force that shapes all things. You do not simply react to the world, you create it. If you believe yourself to be a victim of circumstance, then circumstance must confirm your belief. If you assume that joy is beyond your reach, then it will forever remain so. But the moment you dare to believe in something greater, the moment you assume a new state, the world must yield to your assumption. What would you think if you were already free? What would you feel if all sorrow had vanished? What would you say? How would you move if you were already the person you desire to be? These are not idle questions. They are the key to transformation. If you can answer them, and if you can assume the answers as true, then your world must shift to match your assumption. There is no other way, for the law is unbreakable. You must persist. The mind, like a river, follows the path of least resistance. If you have entertained thoughts of sorrow for long, they may try to return, but do not waver. Continue to assume joy, continue to think from the state of happiness, and soon it will become natural to you. What once felt foreign will become familiar. The old state will fade, and in its place the new will take root. You are the cause of all that you experience. The power is not outside of you, it has always been within. There is no need to seek, no need to wait. Assume now the state you desire and let the world reshape itself accordingly. The world you see, the conditions you experience, the emotions you feel are not separate from you. They are not random occurrences, nor are they dictated by forces outside your control. Everything that appears in your life is drawn to you by the nature of your consciousness. The thoughts you entertain, the beliefs you hold, the assumptions you accept as true, all these shape the reality you experience. If sadness persists, it does so only because you have granted it permission to exist through the habitual dwelling upon it. But just as you have assumed sadness, so too can you assume its opposite. The power is within you. You have been told that emotions arise naturally, that they are the result of external events, that happiness or sorrow is dictated by the world around you. But this is not so. Nothing in the outer world has any power over you except that which you give it. The world is only a reflection, an echo of the inner state you have chosen to occupy. If you change your inner state, the outer world must change to match it. This is the great secret hidden in plain sight. The world does not cause your feelings cause the world. You may say, but I feel sad and I do not know how to feel otherwise. And I ask you, have you not felt happiness before? Have you not known moments of joy, of peace, of fulfillment? If you have experienced these states once, then they are just as real now as they were then. They have not vanished. It is only your awareness that has shifted, your focus that has turned elsewhere. What you attend to grows, and what you withdraw your attention from must fade. If you turn your awareness away from sadness and toward joy, then joy must expand, must fill the space where sorrow once lived. Imagine yourself as an actor upon a stage. If you were given a role of great sorrow, would you not feel it deeply? Would you not weep, sigh, lower your head in despair? And yet, when the play is over, do you not remove the costume? step out of the role and return to your true self? The emotions you felt on stage were real in that moment, but they did not define you. You assumed them temporarily. And in the same way, the sorrow you feel now is only a role you have played, a state you have occupied. But you are not bound to it. You may step out of it at any moment. Do not look to the world for evidence before you assume a new state. The world is always one step behind, always reflecting what has already been assumed. If you wait to see joy before you allow yourself to feel it, you will wait forever. You must assume the state first, and then the evidence will follow. Close your eyes and ask yourself, if I were free of sorrow, how would I feel? How would I move through the world? What thoughts would I think? And having found the answer, dwell in that feeling, let it fill you, let it become familiar until it is more real than the sadness you once knew. Your imagination is the key to transformation. Whatever you accept in imagination as true will harden into fact. If you imagine yourself free of sadness, if you assume the feeling of joy, the world must rearrange itself to reflect this new state. It does not matter what your current circumstances are. They are only the result of past assumptions, and they have no power to bind you unless you continue to accept them. The moment you dare to believe in a new reality, the process of change begins. You may say, but I have been sad for so long. How can I feel joy when all I know is sorrow? And I tell you, the length of time you have dwelled in one state means nothing. If you have lived in darkness for years, does it take years for the light to enter when you open the door? No, it happens in an instant. The same is true of the mind. The moment you turn toward joy, the moment you assume it as your natural state, sadness begins to fade. Do not struggle against it. Simply cease to identify with it. Cease to give it your attention, and it will lose its hold on you. Persist in the assumption of joy. At first, the old thoughts may try to return. They may whisper that nothing has changed, that sorrow is still real, but do not listen. They are only the echoes of a past state, a state that no longer serves you. Continue to assume happiness. Continue to dwell in the feeling of freedom, and soon it will become your dominant reality. Just as a river carves a new path through steady persistence, so too will your mind create a new way of being. You are not at the mercy of the world. You are the cause of all that you experience. There is no need to seek happiness outside of yourself, for it is already within you, waiting to be claimed. Assume now the state of joy and let the world reflect it back to you. There is nothing to wait for. The moment you assume it, it is done. Nothing exists outside of consciousness. The world you see, the conditions you experience, and the emotions you feel are all projections of your inner state. The great illusion is that circumstances shape your feelings, but the truth is the opposite. Your feelings shape your circumstances. You may believe that sadness is a natural response to events, that you feel sorrow because life has given you a reason to, but this is only a trick of the senses. Life merely reflects back to you the state you have accepted as real. If you desire joy, then you must first assume joy. If you long for peace, then you must first dwell in peace within. The outer world is always one step behind your inner world. It is like a mirror. What you see in it is only a reflection of what has already been impressed upon your consciousness. If you wish to change the reflection, you do not reach out and try to alter the mirror itself. You change the image you project. So it is with life. You do not fight against circumstances, for they are only the shadows cast by past assumptions. You turn within, and by assuming a new state of being, you alter the world around you. You may ask, how can I feel happiness when my present situation is filled with sorrow? And I tell you, feeling precedes experience. You must feel it first before it can take form in your world. Have you not often worried about things that never came to pass? Have you not entertained fears that later became real? If you have proven to yourself that an assumption of fear brings fearful circumstances, why then should you doubt that an assumption of joy will bring joyful circumstances? Every state of being exists now. Happiness is not something to be found. It is something to be accepted. It is already within you, waiting to be claimed. Just as the radio waves of countless stations fill the air around you, yet you hear only the one to which you are tuned, so too do all states exist, and you experience only the one with which you are aligned. Tune yourself to joy, and joy must become your experience. Tune yourself to sorrow, and sorrow must persist. The choice is always yours. You must assume the state of being you wish to experience. If you desire happiness, you do not wait for something in the outer world to bring it to you. You assume the feeling of happiness now as though it were already yours. Ask yourself, if I were truly happy, how would I think? How would I move? How would I speak? And having found the answer, begin to live from that state now. Do not wait. Do not look to the outer world for confirmation. The outer world is only a reflection, and it will not change until you change within. When you assume a state, you do not merely wish for it, you embody it. There is a vast difference between wanting something and assuming it as already yours. If you desire something and place it in the future, it will forever remain in the future. But if you assume that it is already done, that it is already your reality, the world must shift to bring it forth. It has no choice, for it is bound by law to reflect that which you accept as true. This is not mere imagination in the sense of daydreaming or idle fantasy. This is the deliberate act of creation. The same power that has shaped every aspect of your life up until now is the power you will use to reshape it. But you must persist. If you plant a seed and then dig it up each day to see if it is growing, you will never see it bear fruit. The same is true with your assumptions. You do not test them with doubt. You nurture them with certainty. You dwell in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and in time it hardens into fact. When the old thoughts return, as they often will in the beginning, you do not fight them. You simply turn away from them, just as you would turn from an unpleasant scene. You withdraw your attention and place it upon the new reality you have chosen. For attention is the key. Where your attention goes, there your life follows. If you give your attention to sorrow, you give it life. If you give your attention to joy, you breathe it into existence. Gratitude is a powerful tool in shifting your state. Not gratitude for things as they are, but gratitude for things as they are becoming. When you give thanks for your happiness before it has appeared, you confirm its reality in your mind, and by confirming it, you bring it forth. Speak words of gratitude as though the thing you desire is already yours, and you will find that the world must rearrange itself to make it so. Persist in your assumption, assume joy, assume peace, assume fulfillment, and let the world reflect it back to you. The great secret is this: you are already free. You have always been free. The only chains that bind you are the ones you have accepted as real. The moment you withdraw your belief from them, they must disappear. The moment you claim joy as your natural state, the world must confirm it. It is done the moment you assume it. Everything you experience is the outpicturing of your inner world. There's nothing that appears in your life that has not first existed in the unseen realm of your mind. To believe that sorrow is imposed upon you by external forces is to misunderstand the very nature of creation. The truth is, the state you dwell in, whether joy or sadness, is entirely within your control. You are the cause, never the effect. Your emotions, your circumstances, and the conditions of your life are merely reflections of the thoughts and assumptions you have entertained over time. If you can accept this, you hold the key to freedom. For what is created by assumption, there is a law that governs all things. And that law is simple. As you assume, so shall you be. This is not a passive statement, nor is it a metaphor. It is the unbreakable truth of life. If you assume yourself to be burdened, life will conform to prove you right. If you assume yourself to be joyful, life will align itself accordingly. The world is nothing more than a mirror reflecting your inner state. Change your reflection in the mirror and you will change nothing. Change the source of the reflection and everything must follow. If sadness lingers, it is not because of circumstances. It is because the state of sadness has been unconsciously accepted as real. Perhaps you believe you have every reason to be sad, that events in the past justify your sorrow. But the past exists only in memory, and memory itself is fluid. You are not bound by what was. You are only bound by what you continue to assume as true. The moment you decide to free yourself from an old state, the past loses its power. It was never the past that held you. It was your assumption that it still matters. The feeling of relief comes the instant you recognize that your state of being is self-imposed. You need not wait for the world to change before you feel better. You must first feel better, and then the world will change to match it. This is the opposite of what most believe. They say, when things improve, I will be happy, but this is not the law. The law states that you must first assume happiness, and only then will things improve. Cause and effect have been misunderstood, but now you know the truth. The cause is always within. Your state of consciousness is like a garment. You wear it, but it is not you. And just as you would not hesitate to remove an uncomfortable coat and replace it with one more fitting, so too should you be willing to discard any state that no longer serves you. The moment you decide that you have worn sadness long enough, the moment you refuse to claim it as your own, it must begin to loosen its hold. This is not to say that you suppress your emotions. Suppression is resistance, and what you resist persists. Instead, you acknowledge that the emotion is there, but remind yourself that it has no power other than the power you give it. You do not engage with it. You do not claim it. You simply turn your attention to a new state, and by doing so, the old must fade. Attention is the secret. Wherever your attention goes, energy flows. If you continue to feed sadness with your thoughts, it will persist. But the moment you withdraw your attention and place it upon something else, something joyful, something fulfilling, you shift the flow of energy and the old state begins to wither. This is why you must guard your mind. You must be vigilant with what you entertain, for every thought, when dwelled upon, seeks expression. How do you assume a new state? You do it through imagination. If you wish to be joyful, imagine what it would feel like if you already were. Do not merely think about happiness, enter into it, feel it as though it were real. Speak as you would if you were happy. Move as you would if joy were natural to you. Your imagination is the bridge between where you are and where you wish to be. And when you persist in the assumption of a new state, it must solidify into fact. You may not see immediate evidence, but this should not concern you. The outer world takes time to rearrange itself to reflect your inner world. Just as a seed does not sprout the moment it is planted, so too does your assumption take time to bear fruit. But rest assured, if you persist, the result is inevitable. The law cannot fail. There is no effort in this process, only conviction. You do not struggle to become happy, you assume that you already are. You do not wish for joy, you claim it as yours now. If you accept this truth and live from it, you will find that the sorrow you once carried vanishes like mist before the rising sun. The power has always been within you, waiting to be claimed. Assume now the state you desire and let the world conform accordingly. The secret to overcoming sadness lies in understanding that every emotional state is self-imposed. It may appear that external events dictate how you feel, that the circumstances of life determine whether you experience joy or sorrow, but this is not so. The world does not act upon you, you act upon the world. Your emotional state is not the effect of external conditions, rather it is the cause. And when you come to understand this truth, you will see that you have always held the power to change your reality. You are not merely a passive observer of life, you are its creator. The feelings you entertain, the thoughts you dwell upon, and the assumptions you hold shape the world you experience. The sadness that seems so real is only real because you have granted it your belief. The moment you withdraw that belief, the moment you cease to accept it as your truth, it must begin to fade. No state can remain unless it is fed by attention. Most people believe they are trapped by their emotions, that they have no choice but to feel as they do. But this is a great misunderstanding. Feelings follow thought. Change the thought, and the feeling must change as well. You cannot hold a thought of joy and remain in sorrow, just as you cannot hold a thought of lack and experience abundance. The law is simple. As you assume, so shall you be. If sadness persists, it is not because you are bound to it, but because you have unconsciously chosen to dwell in it. Perhaps you feel justified in your sorrow, believing that life has given you reason to suffer. But the truth is that no past event, no outer condition has any power over you unless you give it power. The past is only a memory, and memory itself is malleable. It is not the event that shaped your emotions, but your interpretation of it. Change the meaning, and you change the experience. You are always assuming something. At every moment, you are placing your attention on a state, and that state then expresses itself in your world. If you do not deliberately choose where to place your attention, it will be chosen for you, usually by past conditioning, by old patterns of thought that no longer serve you. But you are not bound by these patterns. The moment you become aware of them, you have the power to change them. You must begin to assume the feeling of joy, even when the outer world has not yet reflected it. This is the great secret. You do not wait for conditions to change before you feel differently. You feel differently, and then conditions change. The outer world is always a step behind the inner world. It is merely an echo of what has already been accepted in consciousness. If you persist in the assumption of joy, if you refuse to entertain thoughts of sadness, then sadness must dissolve and joy must take its place. You may say, but how can I feel joy when I am surrounded by sorrow? And I tell you, the circumstances do not matter. The only thing that matters is the state you assume. Have you ever noticed how two people can experience the same event, but react in entirely different ways? One may see tragedy, while the other sees opportunity. The event is the same, but their assumptions about it create entirely different realities. If this is true, then it is not the event that holds meaning, it is the meaning you assign to it. And because you assign the meaning, you have the power to change it. You must refuse to accept sadness as your reality, not through force, not by struggling against it, but by gently withdrawing your attention from it and placing it upon its opposite. If you wish to feel joy, begin to imagine what it would be like if joy were your natural state. How would you move? How would you speak? What thoughts would fill your mind? And having found the answer, begin to live as though it were already true. Do not wait for the world to confirm your assumption. The world can only reflect what has already been assumed. There is no effort in this. You are not forcing yourself to feel something you do not truly believe. You are simply shifting your awareness, choosing to dwell in a new state rather than the old. If you persist, the new state will become familiar and the old state will lose its grip. Just as a habit is formed through repetition, so too is a new state of consciousness established by dwelling in it. Your feelings are not random. They are the result of the thoughts you accept as true. If you wish to change how you feel, change what you accept as true. Assume that joy is natural to you. Assume that peace is already yours. And if you persist in this assumption, the world must conform. It cannot do otherwise, for it is bound by law to reflect your state of being. You are free at every moment to choose a new reality. No condition, no past event, no circumstance has the power to hold you unless you continue to accept it. The moment you assume a new state, the process of change begins. It does not matter how long you've dwelled in sadness, just as it does not matter how long a room has been in darkness. The moment the light is turned on, the darkness disappears. Do not look to the outer world for confirmation. Assume the state you desire and let the world rearrange itself to reflect it. This is the law of consciousness, and it cannot fail. Your only task is to assume that which you desire to be, and the rest will follow. The moment you claim joy as your own, sadness must fade, for it cannot exist in the presence of a new assumption. It is done the moment you believe it to be so. The mind is the only reality, and what you accept as true will manifest itself in your world. If you believe yourself to be burdened by sorrow, then sorrow must continue. If you believe yourself to be free, then freedom must follow. There is no power outside of you determining your fate. The world you see, the conditions you experience, and the emotions you feel are all reflections of what you have accepted within. If you wish to transcend sadness, you must first cease to claim it as your own. You must no longer say, "I am sad," for in doing so you are affirming its reality. Instead, you must assume the state of joy even before the evidence of joy appears. Nothing can change in your outer world until you first change within. In truth, it is your feelings that dictate your circumstance. If you wait for the world to change before you allow yourself to feel happiness, you will wait forever. You must assume happiness now in the present moment and let the world conform to that assumption. This is the secret of all transformation. You do not fight against the old, you simply assume the new. And in assuming the new, the old must fade away. It may seem difficult to feel joy when sorrow has been your constant companion, but the difficulty is only in the mind. You are not required to struggle or force yourself into a new state. You are only required to believe in its reality. If you can believe even for a moment that joy is possible for you, then you have already taken the first step toward making it real. The seed of transformation is planted in imagination, and if you persist in assuming its truth, it must grow into tangible experience. Your imagination is the key to all change. It is the bridge between where you are and where you wish to be. If you can imagine yourself joyful, if you can see yourself as free from sadness, then you are already creating that reality. Do not look to the world for confirmation. Look only within. If you persist in dwelling in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, the outer world will be forced to mirror it. This is not theory. This is law. The world has no choice but to rearrange itself according to the assumptions you hold about yourself. Do not confuse imagination with idle daydreaming. You are not merely fantasizing about a better life. You are actively shaping your future. Every thought, every assumption, every feeling is a seed planted in consciousness. And consciousness will always bring forth what has been sown. If you dwell in thoughts of sadness, you will continue to harvest sorrow. If you dwell in thoughts of joy, joy must take root and flourish in your life. The law does not discriminate. It simply reflects what you assume to be true. If sadness returns, do not fight it. To resist a thing is to give it power. Instead, withdraw your attention from it, just as you would change the channel on a radio to tune into a different frequency, so too must you shift your attention to a new state of being. Do not dwell on what was, dwell only on what is becoming. Assume that joy is already yours, and let the feeling of that assumption fill your mind. If you persist, the outer world must align itself with your new state. Gratitude is a powerful tool in this process. Not gratitude for what already exists, but gratitude for what is coming. Speak words of thanks, as though your joy were already real. Feel appreciation for the happiness that is on its way, and in doing so you make its arrival certain. The world must respond to the vibration you offer, and if you dwell in gratitude, you will call forth experiences that match it. Persist in your assumption, no matter what the outer world appears to show. The moment you decide that sadness is no longer yours, the process of transformation begins. Assume the feeling of joy, live from that state, and let the world reshape itself to reflect your new reality. It is done the moment you believe it to be so. The truth has been laid before you. The outer world is nothing but a reflection of your inner state. If sadness has ruled your life, it is only because you have unknowingly accepted it. But now you understand that no emotion, no circumstance, no past experience has any power over you unless you continue to grant it authority. You are not bound by what was. You are free to create what will be. The key to transformation lies in assumption. You must assume the state you desire, not tomorrow, not when the world gives you permission, but now. You must live as though your joy is already real, as though the burden has already lifted. And if you persist in this assumption, the world must conform. The law is unbreakable. As you assume, so shall you be. Your mind is the only reality. Withdraw your attention from sorrow, and sorrow must fade. Place your focus upon joy, and joy must take root. This is not wishful thinking. It is the law of consciousness, the foundation of all creation. You need not struggle. You need only believe. The moment you claim joy as your own, the process of change begins. Do not look to the world for evidence. The world is only an echo of past assumptions. Instead, hold fast to your new state, knowing that the unseen is just as real as the seen. If you persist, the unseen must become visible, the assumed must become fact. You are free at this very moment to assume a new reality, and in doing so, sadness must dissolve. The power has always been within you. Assume joy and let the world follow. It is done the moment you believe it to be so.